This is Unfiltered, presented by Youth of MCC.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm here today with Maz, Timur, Jamal, and our special guest Bilal from Project Taqwa. Today, we're going to discuss the impact of men's mental health. Whether you may or may not know, today is the end of Men's Mental Health Week, so we're excited to have Bilal here to talk about this topic with us.
Yeah, Bilal, can you give us a quick intro on who you are and kind of about what Project Taqwa is? I know they're a Muslim mental health organization from the front, but there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you guys for having me. I've listened to a couple of you guys' podcasts before and really enjoy it, so I'm super grateful for the opportunity. But yeah, once again, my name is Bilal. I am a member of Project Taqwa, which is a Muslim mental health advocacy organization. We're based in Chicago, made up primarily of college students. Basically, our main mission is to reduce the stigma around mental health issues, as well as connect the general community with Muslim mental health professionals in any way that we can. And also go back into educational institutions and help them improve their mental health and counseling services. So I think that's a pretty good blurb of it right now.
Yeah. Project Taqwa was pretty cool. I had the opportunity to work on a few projects with them, still working with them, and there's like a really cool documentary coming out soon that you all should definitely check out. So we'll keep you all updated on social media. But yeah, Bilal, thanks for joining us. Just in general, I feel like there's a big taboo in not even just specifically like the Muslim community or like Desi community, but just in like America as a whole, just humankind, dude, honestly, of like men not showing emotion, not being emotional, as like compared to women and stuff, right? So like we kind of want to talk about that taboo, especially as Musani mentions, like Men's Mental Health Awareness Month or Week, whatever it is right now. It's one of those two. We want to talk about it a little bit further.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest places to start, though, is something that you talked about. It's the fact that men, like, we don't show emotion compared to women, right? So, like, I'm not likely, if something happens to me, I'm not likely to go up to one of you guys and talk about it. Like, it's just not what a guy does. Like, do you guys feel like that's a true statement? Or is it different for you guys? Maybe you guys have, like, guy friends that are really close to you and, like, you feel comfortable going to them.
Right. I feel like for the most part, some people might have one or two close guy friends they feel like they can go to. It's just the fact that they're a guy themselves. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of hard to open up and kind of, show that side of you. But the truth is, for anybody, I would say, or for most people, that side is there. Even if, for example, I'm talking to you, you might not know that side about me. And, you're talking to me, you don't know, and like vice versa, basically. So it is important. I feel like if you kind of hold those things in, you're having a bad day or just going through something really hard in your life and you just hold it in, ultimately it might not do you the best. So.
And it's real too. Like I would never probably go to like one of my close friends and talk about like if I was going through depression or going through anxiety or just anything just in general. If I just was feeling down that day, like I wouldn't do that. I'd kind of take it as my own. I'd probably hop on Call of Duty, try to like wait it out, right? Like that's like the natural thing for me to do, and that shouldn't be the case. Like I should be, I should be like. I should be able to use the resources around me. I should be able to look for professional help if I need it. But that's just such a big stigma in our community.
I want to raise the question, just like to all of you guys and whoever wants to answer, and I would encourage all of you to like, why do you feel like you don't want to? Like for your own personal I guess your own life. Like why do you feel like, oh, I'm feeling down, I can't say this?
I know this is going to sound wrong, but like, let me know if you guys don't agree. I feel like a big part of it is like how you're raised, right? And the way that you're supposed to be as a guy. And I feel like if I'm going out of my way to like say I'm heading up tomorrow to like tell you like I'm having a rough day, I feel like I'm showing like a sign of weakness. Like instead of me showing emotion, it comes off as I'm being weak. And I think that's a big thing. It's like that perception because you feel like you're walking that fine line when in reality it's like it's okay to have a bad day. But people don't tell you that when you're growing up.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true, dude. Like, yeah, if you're having like, it's a sign of weakness. That's honestly what it is. Like, and that's just like been engraved in us ever since we were little growing up. We see it in media, we see it in culture, everything around us. We see like, and it goes further than like you could even say like gender relations, like gender equality, like men are superior to women in that sense, and that's like a whole advocacy right now. That's not right. That kind of ties back into men's mental health. Like we feel superior on the inside that we don't need to show emotion. And that's just like how we grew up in modern society, modern culture.
I think it's the aspect of pressure when it comes to men, especially within our culture. I think that's something that's very is very prevalent. And just like growing up, like, having to make sure that you go through school, you finish your degree. That's something that's so it's so important, and it's emphasized so much between your parents. And, nowadays it's like, girls are also encouraged, right? But for them, it's like it comes down to like, it's always like the man still has to get that done. And so if anything, they'll marry someone or something, and they'll be taken care of in that aspect. But for us, it's like, if we don't succeed in life, if we're not having a job, if we don't get a degree, then we're considered a failure essentially. So I think that's something that like that stigma, that's something that like just kind of brings us down. It's like a whole morale booster, and especially in our Desi culture, I think that's definitely something that's prevalent.
Right, like, so you're saying like that pressure of having to be something, so you kind of don't have time to worry about those small things and like have that like bad day and like let out your emotions and that sort of thing. No, I definitely agree with that. Like personally for me, I think like growing up I had that same thing, but as I've gotten older, not because of me or anything, like it's not like I did anything special, but it just so happened to be the way I am. I'm a pretty like intense and emotional like person, you know what I mean? And like as I've gotten older, I feel like I've owned up to that a little bit more. I don't know. Can you guys relate, or what do you guys
That
think?
takes strength too, honestly. Like if you hide behind all these like walls and these barriers, but to be able to sit here and embrace and like accept, like I think it's hard just for all of us to accept that we have an emotional side to us. Like everyone has an emotional side to them, and just sitting here and accepting that is like it's hard, and to be able to embrace that is powerful, I think, in its own way.
Yeah, echoing on that, I feel like as a guy, especially if you can embrace the fact that you emotions and then show them, that's something else. Like
That's
I used to be,
I struggle with
that's
too.
that's tough. Yeah, because all right, so I used to be friends with this person who, like if I was ever like emotional to an extent, like I feel like I don't know about you guys. You guys ever get someone like when someone tells you you're sensitive and then you're like, now I'm gonna close off. So I'd always get that if I was saying something where it was like this actually was like bothering me, it'd be like, oh, you're being sensitive, and then all of a sudden like you gotta act a little more like tough guy, and you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm not being sensitive, and then you completely close off.
Or don't be a girl. Like if you hear
Yeah.
that term,
Don't
then
be
you're-
soft.
Yeah, don't be
Yup.
soft. Don't be sensitive.
Sensitive,
I,
soft.
I think
girl.
that's what it comes down to, is that fear of like
Yeah.
being soft and people thinking something. It's all about what other people think, I'd say. Like if let's just say you never knew what other people think, or you know for sure that they would think positively, you had some sort of assurance of that, we wouldn't act the way that we do.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
I feel like you see it a lot too, though. Like even like when it comes to stuff like music, like you guys always see like, oh, Drake makes music for soft guys, and then like then there's guys that are like, oh, I don't listen to Drake, and stuff like that. It's the fact that you wouldn't be accepted so badly that you're gonna put off like a complete part of you, and you're gonna bury everything that you're feeling because you're like, well, I want this other person to like me.
Yeah, I think that's a whole deeper debate on like what other people think about you, but it definitely ties into men's mental health and just mental health in general.
There's definitely a lot of stigmas. I think that's what you guys are all on point with whatever you guys are talking about. There's a lot of stigmas about what a man should be, and like, and like the in Desi community itself, and just and as a human in general, like you just see a lot of things growing up. Me myself, like me personally, I put myself out there a lot. Like I started, I guess you could call it poetry. I was writing poems for a little bit, and like I got a lot of hate on the low for that. Like people are like, oh, you're soft, you're doing this, you're doing that, and I just didn't let that get to me. It took me a while for me to like get to that level of not caring about what other people think and stuff, but I definitely got a lot of like people like shaking their head at me, being like, yo, like you some soft stuff, bro, like what are you doing with your life? And I ignored it, and I just went with what I wanted to do.
I think that's one that's super admirable. I think it's important to like express yourself in some sort of way, and that again, that's a whole nother discussion. I think it does tie into men's mental health, but kind of backtracking a little bit to what we were talking about, we all are worried about what somebody else thinks, but we're also sitting here talking about this specific thing. So you might be worried about what Thamur's thinking, but in reality, Thamur's not going to think anything bad of you. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to think anything bad of him, right? You know what I mean? Like if
We're scared of people that we don't know.
Right.
People that see us, like whether it's like on social media or like in other people's snaps or whatever. Like it's like, and emotional doesn't even have to be like crying. It could be just venting. It could be just talking about something that you just are really passionate about and you can't say to other people. Like there's so many different definitions of emotional. I think the biggest one that people think of is like crying, and that's like soft, baby, like girl.
Right.
It's just not right.
Yeah. I think wrapping back to what Tamor said though, like, it definitely probably like for a lot of people, like you see Tamor and you're like, oh, there's just 6'2" guy and he plays football, and then on the low he's putting out like poems on Instagram. So it definitely like messes with your perception, right? So there's something that society wants you to be, and then there's like who you are. Right. And you brought up a really good point that like we're all scared because we're supposed to be what a man's supposed to be. So like for you guys, like what do you feel like a guy is supposed to be? What does it mean to be a man?
I would say, just like we were talking about, like I think the generally accepted, or I don't know about accepted, but generally thought of, thing that comes to mind when you're talking about a man is, somebody who, like Maz was saying, somebody who's independent, somebody who's like the breadwinner of the family, and somebody who is more or less like emotionless, which usually is not the most realistic definition. Now, one thing that I do want to bring up is like, we're sitting here, as Muslims, like, alhamdulillah, and like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as his best friend Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, they were both, like emotional men, and that's not anything like bad whatsoever. They would tell each other how much they cared about each other. They would tell their wives how much they cared about their wives. They would tell, like, the other Sahaba how much they cared about them and how much they loved them. So I think that's something that we can use as an example. And unfortunately, sometimes we might not have that type of role model right in front of us, but it is there, like, in our religions. So.
Yeah, and I feel like that gets like so lost in the weeds. Like that's all there, and when you read up on it, it's there, especially as like a Muslim American. But then like there's this whole thing of like, again, what other people think of us, and that's shaped by like our culture, society, what we grew up in. And it's not even something that you can like flip a switch and be like, okay, just because the Prophet acted this way, I'm gonna act this way, and then you're gonna take heat from all these different directions, right? And then that might push you back into your shell. So like there's so many different, like, it's not something where we could just sit here and be like, okay, now I'm just gonna let all my emotions out. Like, how do you go about doing that then?
Yeah, I feel like you mental
because like you still need to be the breadwinner of the family. You still need to get your degree. Your parents are still gonna think of you the same as a man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they're still gonna have the same expectations. Like, how do you counter that?
Right. And I feel like you can definitely do both at the same time. Kind of like what you were talking about, that more like this like 6'2" guy who plays football but also writes poetry on the side. You know what I mean? Like, those things don't have to, like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, you can do all of those things. And like you're saying, you can be the breadwinner of the family. At the same time, you can also talk to your best friend about how you're feeling that other day. Or you can, if it's really bad, or even if it's not really bad, go to therapy or something like that and talk about whatever it is that's going on. So
do you feel like, especially on the convo of therapy, right? Because for a lot of, I feel like for Muslims in general, like mental health, like you either write it off or you don't believe in it. Like, I feel like a lot of times I've seen like various Muslim families that just don't believe in mental health. What's your take on therapy in terms of like why a person should go to therapy and like openly seek it out instead of being scared?
Right. Well, first of all, I want to make clear that I myself, I'm not a therapist. I am not an expert on this. But I feel like with the organization and everything, I feel like I can give a comment about what you just asked. I feel like in the Muslim community in general, unfortunately, that's true. People don't really believe in mental health, and it takes a while, not only for us, but even more so for our parents and generations above them to get to actually talking about that. Like, I know in my family, for the longest time, it's not something that was accepted, but alhamdulillah, like, we made, I think, a lot of progress, and it just goes into like seeking out that knowledge and seeking out the education about those sort of things and accepting that this is a thing. It's not some made up thing. You're not soft just because you need to go to therapy or something like that. I feel like therapy is something that everybody, I don't want to say should go to, but everybody can go to. You don't have to be completely messed up in the head, quote unquote. It can be beneficial. Like, personally, I don't care. Like, I used to be ashamed. I go to therapy. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not ashamed of that. And if I can say that, I'm sure, hopefully, other people can also say that, so.
Yeah. Dude. Well, that's powerful to admit. So for at DePaul, right? So we have psychiatric services. So like being like a freshman mentor, I always feel like I would always get like that lecture at the start just to be like, yo, this is what it is. This is what you can go to. This is how many sessions you can go to for free. And like, especially when you're coming in as a freshman, I feel like you have all those pressures and anxiety. And I feel like mental health in terms of men isn't like laterally just like a Muslim issue, right? Like, I feel like it doesn't, like, skin, ethnicity, that race, like that doesn't define your mental health issue. It's not just something that happens for Muslims. So anytime I'd have a freshman come up to me and tell me like they're having a bad day, especially when you're a freshman, like you may not be making a lot of friends, so you don't have a lot of people to talk to. Like, I would always tell them like go to the therapy sessions, especially because they're free. Like, it doesn't hurt you to go talk to someone. And I feel like for therapy, at least, when you don't know the other person, I don't know about you guys, but when you don't know someone, I feel like it's more easy to talk to them because it's like, yo, I may never see you again, and whatever you feel about me, like, I will never know anyway.
That's a really Okay, I didn't even think about it that way, but it makes sense. Like, talking to someone they don't know is really beneficial in that way because they can't, like, their perception of you, whatever it is, won't affect you because you won't talk to them again. If you didn't have a good experience. But then two, like, you don't have to worry about, like, I feel like a lot of people are scared of opening up to other people because they're scared of what they're gonna say about them to other people.
Yep.
And then, like, rumors go around, and there's just that whole backbiting thing, right? But then, like, you're scared to open up because it could get used against you, and that's happened to people. Like, I know people that open up to other people and it gets used against them, and now they're never gonna open up to someone ever again.
Yeah, they
And I
get
hope that's
burned.
not the case. I hope that's not the case down the road. But, like, it stops you. It makes you, like, I don't want to use the term hard and the opposite of soft, but, like, it makes you in a sense where, like, you don't want to open up to people, you know?
Right. Yeah. I think it does make it a lot tougher when you have that fear in the back of your mind, and therapy can be a way to kind of eliminate
Yeah.
that fear. But with that being said, I feel like there are still lots of fears of going to therapy, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like I don't want to put myself out there. I've never done that before. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know what it's like to, talk about this thing that has been bothering me my entire life, or my relationship with my dad, or my relationship with my big sister, blah blah blah. You know what I mean, or whatever it is. That's kind of at the root of whatever you're going through, if that's the case. So yeah, I feel like those fears will still be there. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Let's just say you had to think about going to therapy. What would you think?
Yeah, I
about?
mean, yeah, I'm someone who has never gone to therapy, and I've always, like, I'm part of Project Taqwa. I help out with them a lot, and I see this is such a beneficial resource. But I personally have not taken that step to do it, and I think a lot of it's rooted in the fear. Like, I'm still fearful of it. I'm fearful to, like, put myself completely out there, put anything that I'm stressed about or have any concern about out in the world and away from just myself, right? And letting out that emotion, and that's something I'm like. This podcast is one step of me pushing myself in that direction, and hopefully I could get there one day, you know. But like. I guess that's just my personal view on it right now, and like I'm just trying to make baby steps to go there.
No, I definitely agree with that. So also like yeah, I've never been to therapy, but I feel like I've also never had an issue where like I feel like I'm someone who really wears like their emotions on their sleeves. So for me, like my mom personally, like she'll always be able to tell like on my like it'll be on my face, it'll be projected like oh you're having a bad day, and so she'll like how moms are, so she'll pester me. She'll be like oh like what's going on, like what's wrong, and I'll always be like no nothing, and that's like it kind of sucks to think like as someone who doesn't have mental health issues, like even someone as close to me as my mom, like I don't feel comfortable opening up to her of my issues just because I see them as like yo those are personal issues, like I'm struggling, I should be better. And when you think about it, you think about someone who has like depression, anxiety, like you think about the fact that even if they have someone that close to them, it's so hard to open up because me as a person, like I can't do it, like but I'm expecting you to do it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think finding someone, like for me personally, right? Like I also have never gone to therapy. I feel like I do a good job of talking to friends and like kind of explaining situations through my friends. And I definitely have certain friends that I know I could just kind of rely on and talk to about certain topics just because I know I could relate to them in some way or another. And if not, then, I try to like phrase whatever I have to say in a way for them to understand. So no, I definitely would kind of back. I kind of, oh my God, dude, I'm literally blanking.
You keep it in your sleeves.
Yeah, so I do keep it in my sleeves, right, just like you, kind of Asani.
Did you guys see there's a story earlier this week and it kind of bugged me, not for the sense that like the guy had mental health issues, but it was a Robinhood investor. Like, he was trading and he was trading
Saw this,
options,
dude.
Yeah.
and his account glitched out and he was like negative like some crazy amount in debt. And it was a dude that was in Naperville, so it's not even like it hits close to home because he's from there. And I don't know why he felt like he couldn't talk to anyone about it, but instead he went and he killed himself instead. Like just that pressure of like, oh, like I messed up. I feel like that's a story that really highlights reality for me in the sense that people like when they feel like they've messed up, it's easier to let it go than it is to talk to people. And I feel like that's such a societal issue that he felt that he couldn't talk to someone.
I really hate how there's like a bad connotation of people who need therapy, and people just think that if you're seeing a therapist, you need help, like you're ill or something's not right, which should not be the case. I hope that all of us guys like have like one or two really close friends that we can go to for like anything, whether it's how depression or serious mental illnesses. Like Maz was saying too, like I'm good with conversations with people. So I have a couple of friends that I can go to with anything. So I've never felt the need to go see a therapist. But also one thing I noticed is that it takes like age and like a time for all guys to really get in touch and like feel with their emotions and stuff.
That's true.
So I think that's something that just comes. We all have like different ways of dealing with our emotions and how we feel about things.
Yeah, I was gonna say like so like I want to see a therapist down the road, right? But right now, like just like you guys, I have friends I could talk to about things. But I think it's a good it's a good next step just to secure your mental health, to like secure like for the future down the road, like maybe those friends won't be there for you. Maybe this person won't be in your life anymore, or maybe that won't be enough for you. Just like it's like a good next step, like just like how you go to the gym to like physically get healthy and to like get ripped or do whatever you're gonna do, right? Same thing with your mental health and to train it. In that sense, and that's something that I look at therapy for. And I think it's great to
Right,
look at
exactly.
it that way.
I love that you said that, because I feel like that's exactly what it is. At least in my experience, you know, I feel like, not that it's not true. Lots of times when you go to therapy, you're kind of just talking to somebody and you're letting them in on whatever's going on. But aside from that, even if it's not like super serious, sometimes it's not just. And again, this is my experience. Sometimes it's not just talking about whatever it is that's going on. There's different exercises that you do where you kind of try to, you know, separate what it is, parts of you, and kind of look at them. It sounds kind of weird at first, but until you start doing it, you don't really realize how much it helps. And then just to comment what you guys are saying, I really love that that you guys, you know, have those friends who you can go to. And alhamdulillah, like I feel like I have the same thing, you know what I mean? But yeah, I still feel like some of those things that might be, for example, this is not specific to me, but like, you know, let's just say I have a really, really, my mom's awesome, by the way. I have a really abusive mom, you know what I mean? Like, she's not, but yeah, I have a really abusive mom. You know, it's going to be kind of hard for me to talk to like Jamal, you know, about that, unfortunately, you know what I mean? But versus, let's just say,
Our boy Edmund.
yeah, exactly. You know, somebody like a therapist or something would be a little bit easier to talk to about that and kind of get to the root of why it is that you're feeling that way. I don't want to ramble on too long, but one more thing that I wanted to say was lots of times when you're going through something and it's kind of like a recurring thing throughout your whole life, lots of times there's something behind it that you haven't properly addressed. It could be like, you know, some sort of trauma or something, and I feel like therapy can kind of address those roots.
Yeah.
So.
And like usually when people talk to their friends, that's one form of therapy, or just talk therapy, right? And there's like, and that like takes off maybe like a layer of your pain, a layer of your emotion. But then, as you said, if you do all these other exercises, you're just slowly like chunking away, right? And you could get to see your true self and get to see like what your life really looks like on the inside. So I think that's powerful, and I just want to echo that.
Jamal, I thought that was a dope analogy though, because like you go to the gym and like, you know, I might see like when you guys lifting, I'm like, oh, you guys have really big arms. Like, what are you doing for your biceps, right? So like that's the same as like talking to your friends, talking it out, and like having those issues. But then once your gains start stagnating, like there's never an issue with going to like a personal trainer and asking them like, yo, in your professional opinion, what should I do next, right? And I feel like that's what we're always scared about doing. It's like, yeah, well, can I take that next step?
And then just like add on to that analogy, people will be like, I'm not gonna see a personal trainer. I was looking up online, figured it out myself, and that's people.
And then you don't make those gains.
Right? Yeah.
Right?
So like
Yeah.
it kind of correlates back and forth, which is cool.
So I think there is something to be said about talking to your friends, right? Bilal, do you ever think there's like an example or a situation where it might be more beneficial, even if you have never gone to a therapist? Do you feel like there's situations where it might be more beneficial to go to a therapist versus like, for example, like for me going to Maz versus going to a therapist, like where should I draw the line?
Yeah, I feel like it's super healthy, like you guys were talking about, to like have those friends that you can like kind of put that trust in and talk to them about whenever it is that you're going through something. But for example, if anybody's, you know, listening, like at home, and they're going through something really, really bad, obviously always, you know, lean on the people who are closest to you and you trust and stuff. But if it is a very bad situation, sometimes in certain situations, it may not be the healthiest thing to look at a friend as a therapist. And it's important to make that distinction and realize that, you know, when it is getting too bad, then, you know, maybe consider going that route. As well as on the other side of it, if a friend is coming to you over and over and over again, obviously don't, you know, leave them hanging or anything. But it's not necessarily your job to be their therapist. It might just be your job as their very close friend or family member to help them help themselves.
I feel like at least on my end, Mazda and tomorrow, I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Like I've definitely had people tell me like severe situations, and then I feel like I'm in that position where it's like I need to help you, right? It's not like I want to help you. It's like, oh, I need to be there. I need to be there in case something goes wrong. And at the same time, like you keep checking in for multiple days at a time, and like you're not getting any better. And for me now you're starting to like kind of drag down my mental health. It's kind of like that albatross idea. And now we're at the point where like we're both bad. So I think it's really important that if you're going through something or you know someone else going through something, like give them your honest opinion, like give them the advice to like, hey, go see a therapist. I think obviously as guys, like we don't enable it enough, and we keep talking about this idea of weakness and like showing weakness. I think it's kind of strength to know that you need someone else there. It's not being weak. It's like knowing yourself better.
I think that just comes with time, straight up. Like as we all mature and become more like aware of how we feel and just become men, I guess, like real men. It just, I guess that's what it is. It just comes in time.
On a side topic though, on a tangent, like all of us, like like are like college bound, like clearly like we all like have people around us. When you think of like people that are like in the media and famous people, do you feel like these mental health issues don't like? Do you think there's just like an us problem, or do you think it extends to people that are famous and wealthy, like people that have more resources? Do you feel like they still suffer from these issues too?
I mean, like 100%. And again, this might not be completely accurate for everybody, but maybe even more so, than we do because of the fact that, the spotlight's on them or they're chasing something their entire life, be it money or fame or women or if it's a woman, a man, you know what I mean? And their whole life, they're chasing that thing, and then these things don't really give that true, like satisfaction in life. And
Like
I feel,
money, yeah.
right,
As
right,
you said, yeah.
right. And I feel like they probably deal with it even more so than we might. There's obviously many examples of that. I don't know if you want to touch on them, but
I love when the other guys touch on it.
We're all humans, so I feel like they deal with different things. They have completely different lifestyles than we do. We all have pretty similar lifestyles here, so our problems will definitely differ than theirs, but they definitely have their own issues. I know a lot of celebrities that are pretty open about like their mental health issues, and even that they admit that they see therapists and stuff. Like going to rehab for them is like a common thing that celebrities do, which isn't a bad thing. You should always seek help if you're not okay. But yeah, no, most definitely. I don't think that they just because they're celebrities and they're rich and famous doesn't mean they don't go through issues and stuff like us. But it all just on different wavelengths. I think.
And then like recently to touch on that, like something that hit close to home for people that like Bollywood. There was a really prominent actor that passed away by suicide. His name, dude, I can't really pronounce it, so I'm not gonna even try. I'm gonna butcher it. I know. Sushant, and then it's like Singh Rajput. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. I don't want to laugh about it 'cause it's sad. It's actually a tragedy. But he was like a really prominent Bollywood actor, and he committed suicide because he felt like. And I'm not trying to speculate. I'm just kind of saying like what I saw and what I read. I'm sure there's more to it behind the scenes, but a lot of it had to do with mental health and not being able to be open with people and taking heat from a lot of different directions and not having anywhere to put that, So like that hit really close to home. And then right now is like Men's Mental Health Awareness Week. So like there's like all these things together, and I feel like it's like perfect to talk about this, but also like a perfect opportunity for us, even on the pod, to push ourselves and to like work out our mental health and to like realize that it's real. It's not like something that you can just shove away forever because it'll come back, it'll catch you.
I think like the saddest part of that story though is, and relating to like the last story too with the kid from Naperville, I think the biggest issue that you see there is like by no means would you have imagined that someone that's suffering from mental illness. And I think that's one of the key things that people don't talk about. And I feel like you put a picture on a lot of issues, right? Like when you think about someone that's depressed, you put a picture to it. When you think about someone who has anxiety, you put a picture to it. But the thing with mental health is like you could be going through something and no one around you even knows. I think that's like the scariest part of it because you don't know, and if someone's not willing to open up, then that's just like a lose-lose situation where you're just stuck and you can't find a solution.
Right. I feel like anytime that unfortunate situation comes up where somebody commits suicide, it's almost always like, oh man, like I thought he was doing so well, you know what I mean? Like maybe it's been like a month or so now, but this one bodybuilder, I'm really into like bodybuilding and stuff, so like I was following this guy for a while, and his name's Luke Sando, I think that's his last name, but yeah, he committed suicide. And we want these things, like we want, like you were talking about, like working out at the gym, like we want these like big muscles and stuff like that. Man, he had it all. He was going to compete in like probably the Olympia and stuff, and just wasn't happy in life. And unfortunately it got to the point where he didn't want to be here anymore. These things, I don't want to say for each specific situation can be prevented because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will, that's his will, but generally speaking, there are things that we can do to help people who are going through this sort of thing, and help them get the help that they need, by kind of reducing that stigma.
I feel like we definitely shouldn't be the ones to be like, oh, look, what could have we done? Like after something like that, right? Because that's typically what kind of happens. Like, wow, like why were they feeling this way? Like, what could I have done? Like, like it's something that you want to try to be proactive about, and something that you want, like, even if it's like if someone exhibits signs of in any sort of way, try to just be forward with them, come up to them, approach them in any sort of way, because that, like, something small like that can save a life essentially.
Right, exactly. And I feel like that in and of itself, and kind of being more open about maybe your own stuff, can kind of change things on a systemic level, as opposed to like each situation looking at it like you were saying, like, oh, this shouldn't have happened, I should have talked to this person, or that, you know what I mean? Instead, how about, or I guess in conjunction with that, I'm kind of aim to reduce that stigma, like in our own lives and with our friends, and pay it forward somehow, some way.
Yeah, I agree with that though. I think I think when you show somebody that you trust them, it's easier for them to trust you, right? And when you build like that comforting environment, then it's not hard to drop like, yo, are you doing okay? Are you good text? Because I feel like when you aren't having those conversations, when it's hard to, like, I feel like when you already are in a position like that, you already have trust issues, right? And like Jamal, you were talking about like getting burned. Like you have those trust issues, which makes it harder for you to then let out your emotions. On top of the fact that you're supposed to be a guy and you're supposed to be a man, and like all that stuff that we talked about earlier. And I feel like it's just like the perfect mix for something to go wrong, right? So that's why it's so hard to talk about like in the aftermath, like, oh, what could we have done? It's like, it shouldn't be what could you have done. It should be like, what are you doing right now?
What must be done according to St. Vincent de Paul. No, I'm playing. Dude, it's so sad, bro. Like you see, like, yeah, you said that. Like, imagine just like being a man, right? And like you have all these like conceptions in your head of like what society thinks of you, and then you open up and you get burned, and it's like, dude, like it's so hard to bounce back from that. So like even like anyone listening right now, like I've been through it. I'm sure other people have been through it. Like steps to get out of that. Like any advice you guys have going around, and we're not speaking as professionals, just as people that may have been there at one point in their lives.
Yeah, maybe not quite like advice that I can give, but one thing that I can give is probably just tell everybody. I feel like everybody here, hopefully, can back me up here and agree with me, that all of us have felt some sort of sadness or anxiety. You know what I mean? People walk into a room, and the reason they're feeling anxiety is because they are like social anxiety in this example. Like they are thinking about what everybody else is thinking about them, but in reality, everybody's kind of too worried about themselves to do that. I feel like it helps to know that, hey, like I've been anxious, like walking into a room before, I'm thinking like, man, what is everybody thinking of me? Like, do I look stupid? Like, am I gonna say something dumb, or so there is that. Not quite advice, but maybe something people can relate to. But
Definitely.
I think for me, I think the biggest thing I could tell anyone would be like, A, obviously like be welcoming enough that someone to talk to, but B, when they do talk to you, like don't make it about yourself, right? And don't like play it off as like the person's like exaggerating. I feel like I've had friends multiple times where like they would tell me in the aftermath, like, oh, I was talking to so and so, and they were like, oh, I'm depressed, and instead of like, like that's a serious statement. Like those, just using those words puts you in like a different like field. Like you shouldn't be just doing like, oh, you're exaggerating. And I also think when like someone comes to you with their problems, like don't make it about you. Like don't. I think people in the moment tend to think like if I relate to you, like you might be more willing to talk to me. But I feel like when you try and relate, you try and make it more about you. And I feel like when someone is in a position where they're willing to talk to you, like let them talk it out, let them air it out, because the chances are they probably haven't done it to anyone else.
right, really quick, I just want to comment on that. Not what I'm about to say, not to generalize too much, but just as men, people say, our listening skills might not be up to par with that of like a woman, where our natural instinct might be to like solve the problem. Yeah. But in reality, I feel like listening skills can kind of really help out in situations like this. And I feel like listening, acknowledging what the person is saying, if they are coming to you and trusting you, and nodding your head and letting them know that you understand and you're there for them, as opposed to saying, oh, well, I should just do this. You know what I mean? Might not be like the best way to go about it. Obviously, it varies from person to person. But I feel like listening skills is definitely a big thing when talking about this.
Yeah. I still feel like people just need to push the convo. I feel like once you start pushing that convo, when you start pushing that needle, once you start raising that awareness, I think that does so many different things. Like an example of this, like I feel like that I've seen, and I know like on the podcast every week we're starting to make like sports examples, but one of the best ones that I've seen was, do you guys remember Brandon Marshall for the Bears, the wide receiver?
Yeah.
So he had, I think he had like borderline personality disorder. So he would like people like early on in his career always labeled him as like, oh, he's a head case, he's a cancer in the locker room, like not understanding that like the guy's actually going through something. And then when he made it to Chicago, like he started charities and foundations, and he made sure to push the conversation on that and like actually fund research to get somewhere. Like obviously like the five of us, like we're not gonna be funding research, but I think when you're pushing that convo and making it more like the norm instead of something that's taboo, then you make it easier for someone else to come and talk to you about it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great example, dude. And just like wrap up and like next steps, like, yeah, pushing the conversation is something that we could all do actively, advocating for it, getting therapy, like doing that yourself, talk therapy with your friends, kind of is like showing support that you're there for people. That's something that's hard for guys to do too. Like you have to feel so hard that like you can't like tell like you can't be open enough. Like, man, it's so hard to explain, but like there's a certain way a guy could conduct himself to be open to people and to know that like you're welcoming to come talk to you, you know, like you don't just shut yourself off from the world. And then maybe that's like a personality thing too, but like that's something that you could do to help push the conversation as well. And but Bilal, it was amazing having you on the pod. I think this was a great conversation to have overall, and we really appreciate your insight. We want to push an organization, and one of those organizations would be Project Taqwa. So we'll have them linked inside this podcast episode in the description, also on our Instagram. So be sure to check them out. We have some amazing programs over at Project Taqwa and different types of therapies that we could get involved in.
Yeah, thank you for coming, bro.
Yeah, I definitely do. I really appreciate you guys having me. Yeah, it's been an honor. This is definitely something I feel like we could continue to talk about going forward, and hopefully, inshallah, you know, all of us will try to put that change, you know, in our lives and pay it forward. So,
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you all at the next episode.